Okay, so welcome everyone. My name is Jane Frankland and I am delighted to be here and to host this virtual live panel. Now in a few minutes I'm going to be introducing you to our panelists and I'm going to be asking them all about upskilling and getting started in tech. Now we want you to have a really valuable 1 hour session with us. So we're going to be getting you to answer some polls shortly and giving you an opportunity to ask questions to our panelists. So please do get involved, tweet about the event and use the hashtag BTF2020. Okay, so the panelists are going to be exploring the benefits of working in tech whilst sharing their personal journeys into tech and the barriers they faced along the way. In addition, they'll be discussing the skills gap in the tech sector, particularly in cybersecurity. Now, with research showing that the global shortfall of cybersecurity jobs is estimated to hit 3.5 million by 2021, they'll also be looking at what's needed to bridge the gap, while looking at the reaction to the government's recent cyber training advert. Looking at tech more broadly, here in the UK, we've a hotbed of tech talent, and there are opportunities everywhere. Digital jobs and skills are underpinning the growth of the UK's thriving tech sector, which in turn is creating high productivity jobs at scale. Employing just under 3 million people with a 40% growth in 2 years, the tech economy is a bigger employer than sectors like hospitality, construction, and financial services. And with large tech companies, as well as startup and scale-up businesses providing inclusive and accessible jobs, the message is clear. You don't have to be a developer to work in a tech company. Sales, account management, HR, legal, and finance are some examples of the types of roles that are in demand in tech companies. So it's clear that access to skilled digital workers is a key factor that sets successful companies apart from failing ones. And in an increasingly data-driven future, this couldn't be more applicable than it is now. Rapid advances in AI, robotics, machine learning, the cloud, and other emerging technologies like quantum computing are happening in ever shorter cycles, changing the very nature of the jobs and the skills that are needed to do them. According to the World Economic Forum, at least 133 million new roles are set to emerge globally by 2022 as a result of the new division of labor between humans, machines, and algorithms. Technical skills like programming, app development, cybersecurity, cloud migration, along with skills that computers can't easily master, such as creative thinking, problem solving and resilience, emotional intelligence and negotiating, are going to be in high demand. To address the needs, companies must invest in their people by freeing up learning budgets and committing to reskilling. They must also find new ways to develop their workforce for those outside traditional talent pools. For example, people from diverse backgrounds, including young people, minority groups, those without a college education, and from low-income households. And when companies do this, they tap into a huge pool of high potential and underutilized talent. They make themselves more adaptable, resilient, innovative, and profitable, and we need these things now. Companies have to start now too. The timing is critical. Even before COVID-19, it was estimated that more than half of all workers would require significant reskilling by 2022. But according to figures released by HMRC recently, almost 10 million people have been temporarily laid off by just over 1 million companies as part of the government's voluntary furlough scheme. We are going through one of the worst recessions that we've ever seen since World War II. And although it seems really bleak, there is always an opportunity to be found out of adversity. As individuals, we can take control of our futures by getting skilled up via academies such as TechTalent Academy, who are actively helping minorities to get into tech nationally, regionally, and in cities like Bristol. This affords you with such an opportunity. If we look at digital tech, we can see a 36% increase in vacancies since our first lockdown peak in the summer. Now, I'm especially excited by this as it demonstrates that tech is an enabler for many companies, communities, and individuals. And here in Bristol, we've seen this play out in the past year, with the highest salary increases being across digital tech skills, and a 1.3 million innovative UK funding grant being awarded to businesses at the University of West of England's Future Space, high-tech co-working and laboratory hub. And with an ambitious One City Plan strategy, Bristol is more committed than ever to use the collective power of public, business and voluntary sector organisations to solve key challenges and drive inclusive economic growth. So with all of this in mind, please let me welcome to you our panellists. Dr. Nathalie Cole, the chapter lead at Cheltenham Ladies Hacking Society and cyber engineer at a defence company, Carol Vaughan, the head of commercial and business development at Innovative Finance, and James Reynolds, the talent acquisition manager at Immersive Labs. Now, welcome to our panelists. Now, just before I start asking you a whole load of questions, I have got some questions for you, my lovely audience. So can you please take a look at the poll tab and complete the questions? I'm going to give you a few minutes and then we are going to reveal the answers. So just head over to the poll tab now. So it's right at the very top. So how is everyone doing with this? Can everyone see? If you want to put comments in the stage, that is the place where you can put comments. Hopefully everyone can see the polls. I'm just going to ask the backstage crew, is this all working? Can we see those polls in a few minutes? It is so good to see everyone here. It is amazing that you have turned up. We have got such a great community joining us today. We've had a really great demand for this, so I'm really, really excited to see certainly what these polls are going to reveal to us. Okay, so I'm going to ask my backstage crew, can you let me know when we can see the polls? If you can just type backstage crew in the comments when we can see them, because I'm expecting us to be able to bring them up really soon. The polls are visible, absolutely great. It's just that we can't see them. So that's fantastic. So I'm glad everyone can see those polls. Okay, so now I'm going to come to our panelists. And my first question to you, I'm going to go around the houses now. So I'm going to start with you, Nathalie. My first question to you is, why tech and what are the benefits of the industry? We can't hear you, Nathalie.
I can go first.
Okay, Caroline, please go first.
No, absolutely. I can go first. So Caroline Vaughan here, and I run, as we said, commercial and business development for the industry body for fintech. So I think it's really important to contextualize within financial services. I think the key part about tech is the fact that it's almost not an industry in and of itself. It infiltrates every single industry. And your stats were fantastic, Jane, which is just how incredible the increase of jobs within this segment are, because it's infusing every industry. I got into this industry by way of a company called Bloomberg out in New York. I was a financial service, I had a journalism background. Financial services was a place that seemed commercially interesting for folks, even though it was right before the first crash. And by proxy, Bloomberg positioned themselves as the technology player in financial services. I think that has moved. You can hear major banks around the world calling themselves technology first companies. And you start to hear most companies call themselves technology first companies. So I think I hope to dig into this today, which is the fact of tech is seen as a stereotype of something. I won't define it right now because I hope that we open that up throughout the course of this conversation. But tech is everything. Tech is not something specifically. It's in every single industry. So it's the evolution of industries as far as I can tell. And I think as soon as you debunk that, you debunk how you go into the sector and the skill sets around that. So I hope we can pick up on that throughout.
I remember you saying tech was a way of being. Like in a panel that we did before, I loved your definition of it. And I really like that because I think now more than ever, it is a way of being because we're all technologists, even if we're not in tech.
Absolutely. It's a way of thinking, I would say. It's not to undermine the fact that there are skills gaps that really need to be addressed. And I think we will go into that later throughout. So I'm not naive enough to say that it's not, that there's not huge gaps that we need to look at, that we need to look at who we're attracting, how we're attracting folks, and opening up what this sector looks like so that new entrants come into the market, be it from other segments that wouldn't consider themselves capable for this sector. But I do think you're absolutely right, Jane. Every sector has to think differently, has to innovate. And so in some ways, it is a way of thinking and a way of being.
James, what is your view?
Yeah, my view on tech. So I know I probably skirt the outside of tech because I work as a recruiter. Like that's my profession. So I've been kind of skirting around tech, engineering, things like that for the last kind of 10 years, talking to lots of technical professionals for sure, and trying to understand what they do, and all of the new kind of buzzwords and jargon and technology that comes out over as time changes. I think tech to me, seeing what developers do nowadays, I know it kind of seems a bit like a superpower now. There's so much you can do with it. Like you can affect so much change in the world through kind of technology, solve so many new problems, and probably create some new problems as well. So yeah, it's really exciting to kind of be part of the industry. And obviously I work at Immersive Labs, so trying to actually kind of improve other people's kind of tech skills as well and get more people into the industry as well. It is quite exciting as well.
Brilliant. Nathalie, are you coping okay with the audio? Can we hear you yet?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Great. This is amazing. Yeah. So why tech, Nathalie? I mean, you came from a different industry. It might be actually quite nice to tell the audience what industry you came from and why you chose tech.
So I used to be a veterinary surgeon, so probably not the standard path into tech or cyber. I kind of decided I wanted to change careers. I was looking for something different. And the reason I ended up in cyber is Jane. It's Jane's fault. So if you're I'm around, it's Jane. I bumped into Jane at... it was a non-cyber event, and I got talking to her, and she mentioned that she was working towards recruiting more women into cyber. And I just thought, oh, that sounds really, really cool. So after that, I'm sorry, I'm waffling on. Forgive me if I'm answering the wrong question, but Jane ended up putting me in touch with a recruiter who helped me, gave me some pointers. But long story short, the appeal for me was the fact that it's a significant technical challenge. I think in my old job, there were aspects of it that were significantly technical, but a lot of the workload was emotional. Whereas with this, it's pure technical. It's a huge learning curve. Everything is constantly evolving. And that was the main appeal for me, the fact that I would never be bored, and everything was always changing. And also compared to my older job, just things like the working hours a little bit more sensible. So I've got my working hours to do each week. I've got a little bit more flexibility. I'm not out in the rain. So those are the main appeals for me.
That's really great. That's so good. Now, what I want to do is really kind of ask the question, it all to do with how you got into tech. So for me, I really I'm a big fan of diversity and things like that. So for me, my journey into tech wasn't straightforward. It's actually not very conventional at all. So I had a degree in woven textile design. So I trained in the arts, and it all began with a boyfriend. So I had fallen in love with a techie. And after I pivoted my career into sales, he asked me if I'd like to start a tech company. So that's really how I got into it. And because I didn't really know anything about technology, and I would say I was a bit of a Luddite, definitely then, The only things that interested me were AI or security, and AI 23 years ago was really too new to really build a company, but security was viable. And to me, security sounded really cool. It sounded a little bit like James Bond, which really it's not really a lot like. But for me, you know, the last 23 years have been an amazing roller coaster of a ride, you know, in cyber, with highlights such as, you know, traveling the world speaking, mentoring hundreds of women, building a top global hacking firm, publishing a best-selling book on why failure to attract and retain women in cybersecurity is making us less safe, and launching a movement. So what I want to ask the panelists, each and every one of you, is what was your journey into tech? And I'm going to start with you, Caroline. Nathalie's almost like, you know, done that in the last question, but Caroline, what was your journey?
Well, I think it started, I grew up in California, so I'm going to start it with that and just almost leave it to linger, which is, grew up in California, specifically in the Northern California, so in the Silicon Valley area. It was so part of the kind of fabric of industry out there. And then by proxy, I left and moved to New York, and then came over to London. And I actually do point my career at Innovate Finance back to when there was the emergence of kind of Silicon roundabout, and the government was very bullish on this sector. There is, again, I go back to the mind shift that really happened. People were just talking about creating companies. It changed in the cultural narrative. And so I was really drawn to that. And again, I worked for Bloomberg. It was a very tech-forward company, but in each culture, you always have the localized cultural mindset to things. So I just felt there was a shift, and I have seen that shift massively over the past 6 years. I won't say that the 6 years ago is when innovation and entrepreneurship happened in this country. It's a hugely entrepreneurial culture. So many of the businesses are SMEs. I think the stat's about 90% of businesses in the UK are SMEs.
Yeah.
So that's what brought me to tech. I think it goes back to the way of thinking, the way of solving problems. And again, Nathalie, you mentioned that it's always changing. You're always trying to solve something new. I hope we talk about just how COVID has made us look at tech. I think the skill set in being adaptable and always thinking about something new has come in very handy in the past 9 months. So I hope we speak about that as well.
We'll talk about it now, Caroline. It's just like, what have you seen with COVID?
I think the only constant is the fact that there's change, and you have to be adaptable. You've seen most of fintechs pivot, well, not most, everybody's had to think about how they survive, thrive, etc. We've seen an emergence of really interesting trends. I say this in every session, and it's a terrible joke, but it lands, which is, who created your digital strategy, your CEO, your CTO, or COVID? It really did. It taught us all how quickly we can respond to change. So if you look at a stat in the UK, 12% of grown adults in the UK, so I think it was 60,000 people, 12% of the adults in the UK now have a digital banking app. Now, if you had told me a year ago that your grandmother, your mother, etc., would be on, I don't know that they're necessarily on Monzo or Sterling, but that they would manage to get all of their banking done on their phone, I would have been impressed. So you can show that when change needs to happen, it can happen. And so I think that adaptability has been interesting. I think we've seen massive institutions realize they need to adapt to the digital environment over COVID, the move to cloud, the efficiencies on operations, etc. So I know this has been talked about quite a bit, but I do think that mindset and being able to solve problems in a quick and innovative way, the fact that the fintech and kind of a lot of financial services were thinking that way, allowed them to respond really quickly to these problems. And long may that last.
It's quite interesting, actually, because I think, you know, from what I've heard and read, you know, it's brought us further forward in the past 2 years. So we knew the change was happening, it was coming, but maybe that was in 3 to 5 years. And with COVID, it's just accelerated the whole thing. And it's really tested businesses, I was going to say entrepreneurs or small businesses, tested every single business owner and organization. And it's the whole, I think what it's really brought home is the innovation and that speed to be resilient and to solve problems. because no one envisaged anything like this happening at all. And to me, that's really fun, because it really sorts the wheat out from the chaff. And I like change, and I like evolution, and it's good. It strengthens our industry. And although it's really hard, what's happening, and people are dying and things like that and losing their jobs, there is a great opportunity for us to reset and reinvent, and to be really super creative, when it comes to looking at problems and solving them and adapting.
Jane, I just quickly add on to that. I think that's a great point. Businesses had to respond, but also governments had to respond. Individuals had to respond. So we have, like I said about the Banking Act, we have consumers who had to become very digitally savvy very quickly as well, which thus creates market opportunities.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. James, what is your view on this? How, for me, what I want to find out is, why tech? How did you get into tech? What is your view on COVID? I mean, Caroline's just opened up a really good discussion on the relevance of this, which is, as I said in my introduction, particularly relevant because of what is happening to jobs, to how the workforce is changing, to how we're all having to reskill, and the opportunity that digital and tech presents during this time and beyond.
Yeah, quite a few questions there. So I guess interesting, someone mentioned on the stage, actually, like quite a few of us have come from creative backgrounds. I probably started in tech really young without really knowing it, because my dad was like a systems engineer for the old kind of Plessey and things like that. So we had like computers scattered around the house. He used to kind of build them. He'd like show me how to use DOS and install Windows and things like that. So I got that like education from a young age, and then kind of disappeared out of it into kind of creative. So did lots of art stuff, lots of I actually did a film and video degree as well, so decided to go down that route. Graduated around like the last recession, so kind of familiar with what's going on in the world at the moment, from an economic standpoint anyway. And became a chef for a bit, then a ski instructor, did a bit of surfing, used to sell Sky TV door to door as well. So few in like different careers, before kind of getting into recruitment, and then kind of into the tech side of recruitment, probably about 5 years ago. So I've got a bit of a varied background there, but it's really interesting seeing kind of the evolution of tech over the last kind of 5 years that I've been in it as well, going from this predominantly like, and it still probably is like male dominated industry, traditionally like it's a kind of a male seen job, to being like so much talk about like getting more women into tech and widening kind of access, opening up for more minority groups. And like that's something I'm kind of passionate about, and trying to help like use I guess the platform I have to encourage that as well. But that's like super exciting for me. And the fact we've now got like, I guess the impact that COVID is having on that is every company has gone from being this kind of localized, like you can only hire from your local talent pool. So although a company might have these aspirations of being like more diverse, you can't, because if you're limited on geography, you can only hire from the people that you actually have in your office or around the office, to now being able to hire from like anywhere in the world almost.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to start to see like that have a really positive impact on the firms and organizations actually being able to demonstrate that they can do what they have been saying they're going to do. And the ones who actually kind of take action on that should do really well, I think, with their kind of diversity aspects. The impact has been really interesting too. I think like every kind of pandemic there's been previously in the world, there's been a renaissance afterwards. So it's going to be interesting over the next few years to see what like, assuming a tech renaissance looks like. So I'm excited about that too.
That's amazing. Nathalie, I want to ask about your experience of getting into tech, because really what I want to do is find out, come up with like the best ways. What advice would you give someone who wanted to move into tech? And then we're also, you can include the barriers as well, because like getting into certainly cyber, like we're both in cyber, I've been in it for 23 years. There is, I talked about the skill shortage at the very beginning. And I talked about diversity as well. And there's a great demand for diversity of thinking, diversity of experience, and so on, so that we can become stronger and better and more innovative and happier as well in our workforce with a more diverse group of people doing awesome work. It's not always as easy as it appears, despite this shortfall and need and requirement. So if I come to you to begin with, because you've probably got quite a lot to say, I know we've spoken about this quite a bit, but what is your advice for getting into tech? Where do you start? And what are the barriers that you need to be aware of when you are navigating or trying to get in?
Yeah, I think the biggest barrier that I found, particularly because I was looking at technical engineering type roles, was the knowledge barrier. And realistically, coming in on day one, you don't have the knowledge to hit the ground running in an engineering role. So that was the biggest barrier for me. I think in terms of advice I would give and things that I found helpful. So one of the things that I found incredibly useful was the Ladies Hacking Society. It take me, between deciding to move into cyber and actually getting my first job, it did take me a good couple of years, but I think that's something that's improving. And taking part in Ladies Hacking Society events has been incredible. It started off as just in London, but now we're around the country, and I'm actually one of the chapter leads now, which is great. And I would definitely recommend it, primarily because our events are all technical flavored. So we have technical labs, we run pen testing labs, we do engineering labs, we learn technical skills. For example, we're learning to hack mobile applications at the moment. We've got a lab series on, which is brilliant. But as well as those technical skills, you can start building connections with women who are in the industry, who have gone there before you, especially as there's a growth in programs for career changes, which I'll talk about in a second. There's a really good support network there, and it's something that's only growing as more of us move into it. So just in case I didn't say it enough times, that's the Ladies Hacking Society. You can find us on Twitter. Give us a Google, you'll find us. That would be my first call. Networking is really important, but being able to network and learn technical skills at the same time, I think, is brilliant. The other thing that I found really useful, and I would encourage other people to look at, is my actual break came. I mean, I've interviewed for a handful of roles, mostly through networking, but also women in cyber schemes. And there are now some pretty well established women in cyber, or for other career changes as well, taking people who are trained in another career, putting them through a boot camp. So in my case, it was a 12-week boot camp, and then straight into a role with an employer who is willing to invest the time with you. I think I can say tech talent, can't I? Because this is the session.
Yeah.
So
it is.
I did before it was Tech Talent, but I now know other people, including women through Ladies Hacking Society, who are going through the Tech Talent program now. And it's incredible that there is a dedicated scheme where you can get training. You do not have to pay for it, and you should never pay for it unless you can avoid it. That's something Eliza taught me early on. Just do as much free training as you can. Look at these boot camp schemes and look for support, because it's out there.
One of the things I really like about Tech Talent, so I would agree on that, is that they will train you from the offset. So there are some other projects and initiatives that are going on around the country, but often what they will do is, if we look at women and minorities, they'll assess the capabilities, and then they'll match you to an employer. You've usually got to be a UK national, and they'll want to match you usually to a defence company, and unless that defence company or company that is interested in entry-level talent has got the budget to take you there and then, there'll be a stall. So if they don't have that budget, they're not ready to go, then you won't be trained. And Tech Talent is really good, because it's just like, if you raise your hand and say, I'm ready to go, I'm interested in this, I've got that desire, please train me in cyber, software or data, you can get on a program and learn, and then be supported into work. So there's no stall, which is what I really think is hugely valuable. Caroline, what's your view on kind of getting into tech and the barriers that maybe you experienced or have seen along the way?
I think I'm glad we've concentrated on reskilling, but I'm going to actually go earlier in the life cycle of being interested in this sector, which is, I think it's it needs to be debunked what it looks like to work in tech. And I think at younger ages, opening up the doors to understanding that this is a viable career set. I think we assume that education all the way across the board is up to speed with where the market is. And I think it's an unfair assumption. So shameless plug, but Innovate Finance is launching FinTech for schools. And ultimately that is going in to school-age children and just talking about what this career set looks like. It's along the same vein as diversity, which is if you can see the track, you can visualize that you can go there. I'm not saying it's that easy, but I do think it's a good starting point. So it's educating on what working in this sector looks like. And we did some case studies over the summer where we spoke to school students, and I have to tell you, and this is of all across the country, different types of schools, etc. They wanted to go into economics and or go work for an accounting firm. So that's their view of, as I've said, people get into this probably to look to make money. They don't necessarily have exposure to all the different nuances of what this space looks like. I would say if you look at hurdles there, Nathalie, you're absolutely right, the technical talent in tech. But I'm a big proponent of talking about there are so many different facets to making tech happen. You have to be a communicator. You have to be able to tell the story. You can't just build code and not get to market. You have to be able to acquire clients. You have to have sales. So it's really tapping into the fact that there are so many different skill sets, critical thinking. I mean, I could ramble on, and it doesn't just look like one thing to get into this sector. So my answer, if I was being a little bit more simplistic, get earlier into the cycle. I absolutely think that this reskilling movement is incredible. And I think that you're absolutely right, Nathalie. There are so many free opportunities, yes, but just in general, I think the mindset shift to understand that we're all going to need to reskill. I always talk about the 100-year life. We're all going to need to reskill because the world's moving at such incredible pace. But I do think we also need to fill that pipeline of future talent by getting at a younger age to talk to them about what the opportunities are.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. And it's also about presenting what it looks like. Say in cyber, there are many, it's very diverse. So you don't actually have to be a technologist in order to work in cyber. So there are loads and loads of different areas. You just actually need to be able to think well. So you can code well, you can communicate well, you can do both of those two things together really well, but you don't necessarily have to have every single skill in order to work in the industry. Tech is absolutely massive. So there are so many opportunities, and tech to me is so exciting because of that. So I'm going to come to James. What is your view?
On like the benefits of tech or the barriers I came up against?
Well, yeah, it's just like, how do you get into tech? You're in the space, so what are you seeing? What advice would you give someone that wants to move into tech? Where do they start? What barriers should they expect? Yeah,
I think I'd probably reiterate what Nathalie said, actually. Like there's a lot more free tools out there. There's Immersive, same as plug, Immersive Labs with DCA. You can go and learn cyber for free if you want. But there's ones like Code Academy as well. There's all sorts of like tools out there there's loads of content on YouTube even. You can go watch videos if that's the way that you like to learn. So you can explore like all of these topics to your heart's content. You can spend days doing it if you want. So it's so much more accessible than even I found it good kind of few years ago. So I think like if you're passionate about it and you want to develop yourself, you want to get into tech, the initial resources are there. And then it's about like coming up with a plan to actually do it. Like work out first of all, like where you want to go, what your interest actually is. And then try and pursue it. Like going to networking events where you can learn technical skills and meet like-minded people. That's a great way to kind of get jobs. Just applying to companies that you like the sound of, that you want to work at, that are like trying to solve a problem that you're interested in. That's like a great way just to, even if you don't get a job, to get some like interview practice or at least work out what the opportunities are out there. Just kind of like talk to people, try and immerse yourself actually in the industry that you want to get into, and then like opportunities will come to you eventually. even I was chatting to someone the other day, and they had like no job opportunities come to them at all until they started writing a blog about kind of what they were interested in, and they happened to be interested in kind of building labs at home and kind of breaking them. So they started writing a blog about that, and now they get approached about job opportunities all the time, because they're kind of showing their expertise. So if you want to learn something, you're interested in something, just kind of use the resources that are out there, or start kind of blogging about what you're doing and what you're doing to learn. And like things will start to come to you, and you'll start to be able to open up more opportunities to get into what you actually want to do.
I think those are all really valid points. And one of the things that I want to bring up is certifications and qualifications, because a lot of people that I speak to, so I'm approached all the time and like regularly have conversations about this. But a lot of the time, particularly from women, they ask, do I need to recertify? Do I need to go and get a degree in, or like do 3 years, or do an MA, or a PhD, or do this course, or spend that amount of money, etc., etc. What is your view on the qualifications? Is that going to help? Is that going to help them? I have a view on this. Is that going to help them? Nathalie, from your experience?
I have no qualifications in tech or cyber, and I've been incredibly lucky because I had an employer that was willing to take a chance on me, and they've invested they've budgeted for the training, and there are going to be qualifications that I'm going to be working towards in the future. But equally, with a little bit of training and a bit of practice, I'm currently working on projects. I've been with the company about a year now, and I'm working for them and earning money. So I would say, yes, there's definitely a place for qualifications. And I know lots of people who've got qualifications, especially in more specialised areas. For example, some of the women who are doing TechTalent at the moment have got masters in cybersecurity, things like counter-terrorism, which is going to be incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
But equally, if you don't have qualifications, you don't have the budget to pay for them, with schemes like TechTalent and all the free training out there, it doesn't mean that you can't break in.
Yeah. And with the apprenticeships and things like that.
Absolutely.
Caroline, what's your view?
I agree to that. I agree with that entirely. I think we're naive to say you just don't need those skill sets. I think we need to be better at creating accessibility, to your point, Nathalie, on ability to afford, etc. I think we need to be better at that and make sure that we're attracting talent as well. James brought up a really good point at the beginning of this call, which is a nice side part of COVID, which is you can be remote, which means you can find talent in places that weren't geographically close to you. You can attract people from different markets. And I think that democratization of access has been a really interesting way to open up talent pools. But we still do live where people need visas to work in certain countries, et cetera. So, I mean, there still remains some of those problems. But to your point directly around qualifications, yes or no, I think it's a mix of both. I think we need to make it easier for people to get qualifications. I think as a country and as an industry, we need to make sure that that education, certification, all of that is available and accessible, not just to certain subsets. But I do think, again, it's about problem solving. We've had a lot of people that came from creative industries that have gone into this. I do think you can upskill yourself.
Yeah, and I think it's looking for those opportunities. It's just like, great, if you want to go and get qualified, then you can do, but it's not a necessary requirement in order to come into the industry. But you've just got to look for companies that will allow you to move into their industry without having those certifications or qualifications. Nathalie, I remember you actually had to compromise, so getting into cyber, your kind of target was cyber, but you weren't offered a cyber job, and you moved into it and compromised. So you can probably talk about this better than I can, but I think that's worth mentioning as well. So it can be strategic and tactical about how you get into the industry and where you want to go.
Yeah, so a lot of the advice you'll find online, sort of people talking on Twitter and things, is moving into cyber is easier from an IT background. So the iteration of TechTalent that I did, there wasn't a cyber one, it was just a software one. So I actually accepted a job as a software engineer, and my plan was to get a couple of years experience in software and then make the move into cyber. But I was really lucky with the company that I joined at, and the people who were mentoring me saw that that was what I was interested in, and they've let me just take that and run with it. And I actually changed my role within the first 12 months in the company, and now I'm working in cyber. So again, it's just a case of, I think I was very lucky. But I think keep an open mind, because a lot of the skills that you will learn in other technical roles, for example, being a software engineer, a lot of it is basics, first principles. So it's okay to start in a job that's not your dream job, get that baseline knowledge under your belt whilst you're earning a bit of money as well, and then make the move. And I have zero regrets. I'm so pleased I did it. I mean, I was but I'd been very happy to be a software engineer for a couple of years, because it's really interesting. It's really fun.
Yeah. But you've also had your eye on the goal as well. So you've been like moving towards and making those connections and letting everyone know this is what you're really interested in. So like pick me if a role comes up and things like that. The other thing I think it's worth saying is sometimes, you know, if you apply, often what can happen is you'll end up applying for loads of jobs and things like that, and you won't hear back, you won't get any feedback. You can still ask them for feedback, which is really useful. And if you get it, brilliant. If you don't, then sometimes that's how it is, unfortunately. But if you do get rejected, you know, if you go on for an interview and you get rejected for a job, then it doesn't mean to say that you won't ever work at that company. You know, it could be that you actually don't meet their requirements now, but you can come in as an experienced hire later. And sometimes it's easier to get into companies. So some companies, what I see is actually raise the bar. So the bar to get into those companies can be quite high, but actually getting in as an experienced hire, the bar can be slightly lower. It's ironic, but it's just like, I think the message for me in terms of getting into tech or into cyber is, you know, you're going to have to be tenacious. You're going to have to network. You're going to have to be creative, and really raise your profile. So go out there and meet people and find out, and also really think about what area you want to get into. Do you want to go down the consultant path, or do you want to go down the industry path? You know, the two are very different. And what area ideally do you want to specialize in, or don't you know, and you want to go and do a graduate program or a program like IBM say might offer, where they're actually giving you skills in lots of areas, so that you can actually determine, you know, what you enjoy. So there's an awful lot there. You're going to say something, Caroline?
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think it sounds like a cynic in this, because if we're talking about, I think, Nathalie, you're absolutely right, which is get in the door at companies. But as I always say, set yourself up for success. And part of that is looking for high growth potential. And it's very crudely, I think, follow the money. We're still seeing a lot of money flow into growth capital firms. And with that kind of jump on that rocket ship as it's going in the right direction, you will have opportunity after opportunity, just because these companies are evolving so quickly. So you can learn as the company grows. And like you said, get in the door. So as it does grow, you're learning and you're well positioned. These companies are reinventing models. So there's nobody that knows best, if that makes sense. So we've talked about fintech color for the past 6 years. Is it all brand new tech? No, but everybody's learning in real time together. And so it's that critical thinking that I come back to from the beginning that you really do need, and the ability to be adaptable and learn as you go. I think those are the skill sets that are more important than the PhD. The PhD in some ways can be dated quickly. It gives you foundational skills that allow you to think through these problems much more with much more ease, I would say. But I do think get in the door is the number one way to go.
It's funny actually about the PhD. The only place I've ever come across it being a barrier to entry was actually in Australia. So I remember going over to and facilitating a panel over at the University of New South Wales, and they actually said that a lot of applicants who were looking to get into cyber were actually not showing their PhD on their CVs and things like that, because they were then put in the academic. You know, they were rejected, which I've never seen before, but sometimes it will go for you, sometimes it will go against, and usually it comes down to the type of company that you're approaching. But it's just worth bringing up. Now, what I wanted to do was actually talk about, it's an advert that I made mention of it at the beginning, It's an advert that some of you may have seen already, and I really want to share it with you today, but I can't actually because just how it's set up. So I can't share my screen with you unless Nathalie can remove one of the, can you remove that? One of her kind of like profiles. If you can remove one, then I can just bring up this ad, which some of you may have already seen or not. Okay, great, excellent. Let me try and like bring it up now. And then I can just, which I can't find for you. Which is, why is it not there? Which is really annoying. Let me just like stop that for 1 minute and just see if I can, it's just not showing. So let me just try this and see if this advert will show up. If it doesn't, I'm just going to talk about it because I don't want to stall us any longer. No, okay, I'm not going to mess about with it. But it's an ad that you may have seen. Basically, this ad really kind of, a few weeks ago, the internet actually just went berserk. They exploded after an ad that was on behalf of the UK government resurfaced. And this ad was called Fatima, or to do with Fatima's next job. And it was all about, it showed a ballerina, and it was trending on Twitter. There were memes and reactions, you know, to the ad circulated on pretty much every single social media channel out there. And there was blanket coverage of all of this, and it was really critiqued really heavily. And what a lot of people were saying was that there was a lack of respect for the arts. Now, apparently the Fatima ad was one in a series of ads that launched a while ago, encouraging people from lots of different backgrounds and industries to seek training in cybersecurity. And as you've already heard today, I'm a huge fan of getting diversity into cyber. And, you know, I come from an arts background. But rather than me comment, what I want to do is I want to hear from our panelists. James, I'm going to start with you. What is your view on the Fatima advert? Is it good? Is it bad? Was there an overreaction?
Yeah, I think it was potentially poorly timed from like what's going on in the arts, particularly with kind of the impact of COVID and all kind of the redundancies and lack of funding for the arts generally. However, I think it definitely raised the profile of cybersecurity. Like, it created conversation, it created discourse, which, I don't know if you use the adage like all publicity is good publicity. It worked quite well because it definitely kind of got people talking about it. It also created some exceptional memes as well. So my favorite was definitely the Doctor Who Cyberman as a ballerina. That was quite entertaining. And it got lots of chat in our kind of Slack channel as well at work. So I think, timing's not great. Definitely touched like the wrong nerve with a few people, but I don't know, you got to kind of create conversation as well. And it raised, the industry's profile a little bit.
Caroline, what's your view on that? Was it good? Was it patronizing? Did it work?
I think it comes back to the intent. I think the intention was good, back to what James said, but I think the delivery and timing of it that earned it its discussion point. But going back to the positive around it, which was the intention to open up a career path that people don't necessarily think of. Now, do you need to move from one career path to another? That's not necessarily what they were trying to achieve. I think they were trying to illustrate, like we said, visibility for career paths that are less visible. And I do think that part is important. The move from one to the other, I think it struck up competitive. And as we noted, people are out of jobs, especially in the arts. So I do think, though, that it's important. I don't think that was necessarily a diversity discussion to have. I think it was a opening up discussions about what careers are out there.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. You can probably see the picture now. Nathalie, what's your view?
I think I'd echo what the other panelists have really said. I think the timing was an absolute disaster. I think rather than being taken at face value, it was viewed in a wider context of it was very hurtful to a lot of people. I think if it had been released at a different time, and if you view it in a purely practical point of view, I really advert, and not at the time it was given, but this is absolutely the sort of people that we need in our industry. So Fatima is a woman, she's of colour, she's an artist, she would be absolutely incredible. And on a practical note, ballerinas, one, they are tough as nails, they are such impressive people. And also from a practical point of view, if you are a dancer, there is a genuine possibility that you might have to retire early from injury, and also you'll have an earlier retirement age than other professions because it's just so physical. So I think at face value it's excellent, because these are the sort of people we want in our industry. It gives them a non-traditional career path and options to follow if they didn't want to become a dance teacher or do something more traditional. So I really loved that. It was just, and context around it, be that pandemic, be it politics, that it kind of took the shine off it, because I thought actually there were a lot of positives with it.
I'm like you. I thought the same too, but I can sometimes be a bit literal, with my thinking. So I thought it was really practical, and having come from there was a lot of sensitivity around it, and that wasn't handled well. And it was, I think, particularly patronising with the language that was used. But I also think it was really practical as well. So I had to change my career as a designer to feed my family. I was a single parent, so I had to do something that would enable me to do it. So it was a way in, and knowing dancers, even without COVID, a lot of the time their career is finished by the time they're mid-20s. So it's meaning. It was well-meaning, but I think it could have just been done a lot better than it was, and obviously there's sensitivity around it. What I want to do now is actually open up some questions to our audience, and I'm going to go through the questions now just to see. If you've got a question for me, literally stick it in the stage, and I'm going to look to see what questions that you might have for our panelists. So I'm going to go through these now and just see what questions you have. Do you have about getting into tech? Barriers, what do you have to do, any of those things, or something else. So I can see lots of comments here, but what I want are questions. So please just type a question into the stage button where you've all been using it, which is absolutely great. What questions do you want answering now? So we've got one here actually from Georgina. How would you suggest a new entrant decides on cyber versus software versus data? Nathalie, I'm just going to point to you to begin with. So it's a really interesting question.
Yeah, it's just what you're interested in. I mean, I've always been interested in cyber, but I think don't underestimate the fact that other areas are interesting and what you can learn. I mean, if I'm honest, data science is probably one of my least favorite things, and I'll just say no more than that. But just try it, and you don't know unless you try. And I think that's why things like the Ladies Hacking Society is so great, because I've always thought, oh, cybersecurity sounds really cool, so does pen testing, but I've never tried it. And until you've tried it, you don't know. But yeah, follow what you're interested in. If you're not sure, give it a go, and then see what you think.
And also, it's not, I mean, if you start with software anyway, it's quite a good route into cyber. So I think it's really very much a case of understanding what cyber security actually involves, because it is vast and diverse. There are loads and loads of different elements to it. So it's really trying to get a better understanding of what cyber security can offer, which bit you're most interested in. And if you're not sure, then maybe start off with software, data, and then move into cyber, which would be such a great foundation for you moving into cyber anyway. I'm looking at the question here from Jennifer. Are TechTalent currently recruiting for their courses? Now, I've got an answer for you here on that. The courses are full up until the new year, and they're going to then release new dates then. But what I would suggest that you do is really join the community. So you can join the community. They've got meetups going on, and that way you'll be informed as to what is happening and when it's happening and things like that. But obviously when the courses do open up, get on them, apply, and secure your spot ASAP. So let me just go through. I'm still going through these to see what other questions that we have here. There are loads of participation. So what I want to do is just thank you for really kind of playing full out and actually adding to this conversation and your value, because we've got not just people who are interested in getting into tech or cyber joining us today, but we've actually got some really experienced people. I did see Eliza in the chat in the stage area, who is one of the founders of I want to say Ladies of London Hacking Society, LLHS, but maybe the name has changed, because I know you're referring to it, Nathalie, as Ladies Hacking Society.
There's lots of chat.
Yeah. So I've got a question here from Monia. I hope I'm saying that right. She wants to ask if there is a great demand for business analysts in tech, what are good ways to break into this particular career path in tech? Caroline, can you answer that question?
Absolutely. And I actually want to pick up, I'm just looking as these questions come through. A lot is about how you break in, how you get experience before you have experience. It's this kind of double-edged sword of every industry, I have to say, it's moved into. I liked what James said earlier, which I think, and it echoes a lot of Nathalie's, go with what you like, but educate yourself on the environment. Especially in light of COVID, so much content has moved to digital. There's so many digital courses. I mean, we do events constantly. So it's important to understand the macro environment for which you're trying to get your job, so that you can go and be directed to the right companies, the right subsectors. We talk a lot about cyber today. I'm going to be a champion that cyber sits within an umbrella of wider financial services, and that there's huge opportunity across the board. So yes, business analysts, of course. And then I will go back to, because a lot of this is about kind of breaking into the sector, creating networks within the sector, everything from LinkedIn through to basic stuff like that. I have found that people use those more now than ever before, because we're missing the in-person communication. So yes, business analysts are needed. Software versus cyber, et cetera, I would say they're all valid. You want to, I would say, take it up a level, look at the macro environment in terms of where are their opportunities, where is their demand in the market. And I talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but fintech came about 6 years ago. Cyber's been around for ages, but it's about looking at where the world is in terms of their digital skill, the digital gap for consumer products. People are in debt more than ever. People have jobs more than ever. So there's all these new problem sets that the world need to solve. So go to where the problems are and have the technical skills that marry to that. But there's always opportunity where there's problems. Yeah,
great point. We've got a question here, and I'm going to direct it at you, James. I'm hoping you, especially with your recruitment experience, you'll be able to answer it. Amelia is asking, do you have any tips for looking for part-time work? Because there are lots of jobs advertised, but rarely part-time. And I appreciate, James, you're not in recruitment now. You're working with Immersive Labs, which is very different. But can you draw on your recruitment experience to answer this question?
Yeah, like lots. We advertise jobs part-time, or like job share as well, or kind of flexible working. I think a lot more companies are going down that route. Kind of flexible working point or job share. I think it's important. So from the employer side and reviewing hundreds and hundreds of CVs, I would say just make sure you're clear what you want. Most people don't I've never actually seen a CV where someone said, I'm only looking for part-time work and this many hours a week, and I want to work on these days. You've got to be clear with your expectations, and then employers will generally be able to respect that and see whether they can support it. And also bring that up in kind of interviews as well. So it's really clear from the outset that is what you're looking for, and highlight on the employer's jobs that they've advertised it as part-time as well, just to remind them, because sometimes they will forget that they have mentioned that. So yeah, I think just kind of be clear on what your expectations are. Like, it's kind of a give and get. Like, employers give you something, you have to give them something, but you need to get something back in return, and make sure you're clear on what that exchange actually is.
Yeah, good point. You get what you give. You know, so it's I would echo that, and what I would also encourage you to do is so I'm not sure if we're being shut out the event now, but actually we might be. What I would encourage you to do is seek out recruiters, if everyone can still hear me, seek out recruiters who may actually just be looking for placing candidates in part-time work, because there are some out there. I know where I live. Can everyone still hear me at the moment?
I can
hear me. Okay, right, fine. Because I've just got the technology has just brought up a screen actually just saying thanks for attending the event. So I'm just going to carry on talking and try and navigate my way out of this. So what I would say is, like, look for these recruitment companies, because there will be some out there that will only have part-time work, and otherwise go sell yourself, go solve the problem and present this as a problem. Maybe you can double up with someone else who can complement your skills, and you can, if there is a full-time job, present it as a job share. You know, so I know things like that can happen, but you just got to find a way. So as this technology that we're using now is actually directing me to end this virtual event, what I want to do is actually thank you so much for attending and joining us today. So today you've heard about how to get into tech, what the advantages are of having a tech career, what the barriers to entry are, and how to navigate around them. I want to thank our panelists, Dr. Nathalie Cole, Caroline Vaughan, and James Reynolds, for sharing their inspiring journeys and wisdom with us, and of course to you for tuning in to listen and to participate fully. Thank you so much. So if you want to understand more about what TechTalent do, or Immersive Labs, or what Caroline does with her company, or Nathalie does, or ladies of I'm going to say Ladies of London Hacking Society, or Nathalie's chapter, then please do get in contact with us. So that is all for today. And like I said, thank you so much for attending.